The broadcast goes live. The day began like any other. On Earth, the sun rose, and people went about their usual routines. But far above, in the depths of space, something far more significant was happening. Humanity had kept to itself for decades, hidden away in the shadows of a galaxy filled with countless alien civilizations. Their peaceful stance had been a shield, and the rest of the galaxy had come to see them as harmless, weak, and irrelevant. But deep within Earth's highest command centers, a decision was being made that would change everything. At an undisclosed location, inside a massive underground bunker, a team of experts gathered. They were some of the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Scientists, military strategists, and engineers sat together in front of glowing screens, their faces lit by the faint glow of the display. They were here for a single purpose: to release a message into the galaxy, a broadcast that would shake the stars themselves. It had been carefully prepared, encoded, and tested over the past few weeks, but now the moment had arrived. "Everything is ready," said Dr. Elena Ramirez, the lead scientist. She glanced at the clock, noting that the time was precisely right. "We've made sure it's encrypted. No one will trace it back here, not yet. This message will be heard across the galaxy, but no one will know where it's coming from." General Thomas Burke, the military officer in charge, nodded. He had been a part of the strategic planning for this operation from the very beginning. His eyes were cold, calculating. Let them think it's a mistake or an error in the transmission. Let them believe it's a one-time anomaly. But when they hear it, they will know humanity is awake again. They will know Earth is no longer a silent player in the galaxy. "Will it work?" one of the engineers asked nervously. His hands fidgeted with the buttons on the console, the tension in the room palpable. "It has to," Burke replied. His voice was low but firm. "This is our only chance." The signal was prepared and broadcasted live into the heart of space. For the first time in years, a signal from Earth reached out into the void, seeking to wake the slumbering civilizations of the galaxy. The broadcast was simple. It didn't contain much, just a few words. But those words, combined with the unmistakable tone of authority behind them, would have a lasting impact. The message itself was clear. "This is humanity. The galaxy will soon learn of our true strength. Prepare yourselves." The words echoed across the emptiness of space, reaching countless civilizations in every corner of the galaxy. At first, no one noticed. It was just another strange signal, perhaps an anomaly caused by some random space phenomenon. But then, something unexpected happened. Across the galaxy, the major alien factions began to pick up on it. One by one, their communications officers stared at their consoles, unsure of what they were seeing. This was no ordinary transmission. The message had not only come from Earth, but it had been broadcast in a way that no one had thought possible. A human race, seemingly weak and insignificant, was challenging the entire galaxy with nothing more than a few words. The first to react were the Zorathians. They had long viewed humanity as a lesser species, an underdeveloped race that had no place in the grand scheme of the galaxy. They laughed when they heard the message. How could these primitive beings dare challenge their might? They were content to ignore it, dismissing it as nothing more than a foolish cry for attention. Next came the Krulkari, a fierce and war-hardened race that had once tried to invade Earth many years ago. They remembered their defeat, but it had been a long time since they had thought about humanity. The message echoed through their systems, and their leaders gathered in a tense meeting room. The Krulkari didn't know whether to feel angered or amused. Who would dare awaken these ancient warriors? They would show Earth just how foolish they were. But the message continued to spread, catching the attention of more and more species. Soon, the powerful Vulcans, who ruled over vast star systems, heard it too. They had known of humanity's existence for years, but had underestimated them. The Vulcans didn't laugh. They didn't scoff. They feared the broadcast. This was no ordinary signal. It was a challenge, a declaration of war. But against who? Humanity. These fragile, young creatures. It seemed impossible, but the fear lingered. As the message continued to spread, whispers began to circulate among the galaxy's most powerful factions. What had Earth done? How could they have possibly become a threat? It had been decades since humanity had been seen as anything but a peaceful species. The galaxy had long believed that Earth had no interest in conquest or power. But now the broadcast was changing everything. The galaxy's understanding of humanity was about to shatter. Back on Earth, the team inside the underground bunker waited, tense and anxious. The broadcast had gone out. There was no turning back. But they weren't sure what the reaction would be. Would the aliens laugh it off, or would they respond with anger and violence? Only time would tell. Then, the first alien response came. It was brief and to the point, but it carried with it a sense of fear and awe that none of the humans had expected. A voice crackled through the communication systems, breaking the silence of the room. "We have heard your message, Earth. Do not mistake us for fools. We will be watching you closely." The transmission cut off abruptly. And with it, a chilling sense of reality sank in. The galaxy wasn't laughing anymore. The broadcast had done its job. Humanity was no longer just a forgotten species. The true fight had just begun. The silence that followed the broadcast was almost suffocating. For days, the people of Earth waited, hoping that their message had reached the right ears. They knew that they had sent a signal into the depths of space, but they didn't know if it had been noticed by anyone important. There were no immediate threats, no massive fleets appearing at Earth's doorstep, but the tension in the underground bunker remained high. Everyone on Earth held their breath, waiting for the galaxy's response. The question was, what would happen next? Then the response came. It wasn't just one message. It was an overwhelming wave of communications, each one more urgent than the last. The Zorathians were the first to react, their response filled with scorn. They sent an encrypted message, ridiculing humanity for its audacity. It was filled with mocking tones, belittling the human race for thinking they could challenge the might of the ancient and powerful Zorathian Empire. They warned humanity to back off, to retreat into the safety of their insignificant corner of the galaxy. The Zorathians had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and they believed humanity would be no different. The galaxy is not yours to command. The Zorathians' message boomed through the airwaves. Leave us in peace, or face the consequences. But there was something different about this message. The tone was harsh, but beneath it lay a hint of uncertainty. The Zorathians were used to crushing their enemies without hesitation, but now they found themselves second-guessing the motivations behind the broadcast. Was it truly a threat, or was it just a desperate plea for attention from a species that had been forgotten by the greater galaxy? Next came the response from the Krulkari, who had never been as quick to dismiss humanity. The Krulkari were an ancient warrior race, known for their cold logic and fearsome combat tactics. They had encountered Earth before, and despite their initial victory, they had always been cautious of humanity's unpredictable nature. They sent their message directly to Earth, bypassing intermediaries. The Krulkari's response was less mocking than the Zorathians, but no less threatening. Their message was blunt and to the point. Your defiance will be met with war. We remember the taste of victory over your people. We will not hesitate to crush you again. The Krulkari made it clear that they saw this as an act of defiance that would not go unpunished. They warned humanity not to test their resolve, but there was something strange in their words. It was a message of aggression, yes, but it was also filled with a sense of concern. They were worried that humanity's newfound courage might be more than just a bluff. The final message came from the Vulcans, the most powerful race in the galaxy. They were a technologically advanced species that had ruled over vast stretches of space for millennia. The Vulcans had seen many lesser civilizations rise and fall, but they had always believed that Earth was too weak to pose any real threat. Their initial reaction to the broadcast was far more calculated and careful than the others. The Vulcans did not make idle threats. Instead, they carefully crafted a response that would echo throughout the galaxy, sending a chilling message to humanity. "You are making a grave mistake, Earth," the Vulcans warned, their message broadcast in a cold, emotionless tone. "You have awakened powers that even your species cannot understand. The galaxy will not tolerate this challenge. Prepare for the consequences." Unlike the others, the Vulcans made no direct threats. Instead, they spoke of consequences, unknown and vast. They were warning humanity that there was more at stake than they realized. It was a diplomatic message, one designed to intimidate without fully revealing their hand. The Vulcans were playing the long game, waiting to see how humanity would respond. And for the first time, humanity realized they were not dealing with ignorant, overconfident alien races. They were dealing with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The broadcast from Earth had done exactly what it was meant to do. It had shaken the galaxy from its complacency. The laughter and scorn had been replaced by fear, concern, and calculated responses. Humanity had gone from being invisible to becoming the center of the galaxy's attention. And the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a passive player in the galactic drama. They were an active, unpredictable force that would not be ignored. Back on Earth, the tension was palpable. The leaders of the world gathered in secret meetings, discussing the messages that had flooded in. They could not afford to make mistakes now. They had dared to wake up the sleeping giants of the galaxy, and they had to be ready for whatever came next. The human race had never been more united, nor more uncertain of the future. In the midst of this, General Thomas Burke stood before the gathered leaders. He was calm, but his eyes were filled with fire. His team had launched the broadcast, and now it was up to him to lead humanity into this new era. His voice was steady as he spoke. "They think they can scare us," Burke said, his voice carrying authority. "They think they can make us cower, but they don't know us. We are humans. We have fought wars before. We've lost everything and rebuilt from the ashes. We will not bow. This is just the beginning." The room fell silent. There was no turning back. Humanity had made its move. The galaxy had heard the message, and now it was time to prepare for the coming storm. The question that remained was this: could humanity withstand the wrath of the galaxy? Would they crumble under the pressure of the alien threats, or would they rise to meet the challenge? The answers were still unknown, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. As the days passed, tension spread across Earth like wildfire. The messages from the galaxy's most powerful races had left their mark, but it was still unclear whether humanity had the strength to face the storm that was coming. The leaders of the world knew that they had only one chance to prove their worth. It was no longer a question of survival. It was a question of dominance. They had awakened a sleeping beast, and now they had to fight it. General Burke knew that the coming war would not be like any war humanity had fought before. These were not the enemies of Earth's past. These were not just alien invaders coming to take resources or conquer territories. These were the elite of the galaxy, an empire of beings who had lived for millennia, who had wiped out civilizations with ease, and who had never encountered a species like humanity. Earth was nothing more than a speck in their eyes, yet now it had become the focus of their anger, their pride, and their fury. For the first time in history, the Earth's leaders had to make decisions on an entirely new level. They were no longer debating politics or economics. They were preparing for a fight that would determine the fate of the human race. Every nation on Earth had rallied behind General Burke, and for the first time in years, humanity was united. But unity would not be enough to save them. They needed strength. They needed power. And most importantly, they needed to show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The first few days after the broadcast were filled with uneasy anticipation. There were no massive alien fleets descending upon Earth, no immediate attacks. But the silence was deafening. It was as though the galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see if humanity would back down. Earth's defenses had been upgraded over the years, but they were nothing compared to the weaponry and technology of the Zorathians, Krelkari, or Vulcans. Humanity had to think differently. They had to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies without a single shot being fired. Burke's mind raced with possibilities. His team of strategists worked around the clock to create plans that would not only protect Earth, but also send a clear message to the galaxy. If the galaxy thought they could walk all over humanity, they would soon realize their mistake. But the question remained, what would it take to convince the galactic powers that Earth was not to be taken lightly? Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the alien races were in turmoil. The Zorathians, Krelkari, and Vulcans were no longer laughing at humanity. The broadcast had done what it was meant to do. It had ignited a fire in the hearts of Earth's people. But the alien races were not about to back down. They had always dominated, and they were not going to let a fledgling species challenge their supremacy without a response. The Zorathians, furious at the audacity of humanity's broadcast, began assembling their fleet. Their ships were massive and powerful, designed for sheer destruction. The Krelkari, meanwhile, prepared their armies. They were a brutal race, and they took great pleasure in hunting down and destroying their enemies. The Vulcans, however, were far more calculating. They had never been quick to anger, but their response would be just as deadly. They sent covert operatives to gather intelligence, to learn about humanity's weaknesses. They were going to be meticulous in their planning. They weren't just going to invade Earth. They were going to destroy its hope. Back on Earth, the military forces were preparing for a war they had never imagined. The air was thick with tension, and the atmosphere was charged with the sense that something big was coming. Yet no one knew exactly what that would be. The weapons of Earth were powerful, but they were not advanced enough to take on the combined might of the galaxy's greatest races. It was a harsh reality. Humanity had nothing to rely on but their will to fight, and their resilience. But General Burke knew one thing. Humanity's greatest strength was not in their technology, but in their spirit. They were fighters, survivors. They had been pushed to the brink before, and had risen time and again. He had seen it in the battlefield during the many wars that had plagued Earth, and he knew that this time would be no different. Humanity had the fire to push forward, even when all seemed lost. As the days turned into weeks, Earth's military began to take proactive steps. Burke had ordered the construction of new weapons, ones that were designed specifically to send a message to the alien races. These were not just weapons of destruction. They were symbols of defiance. The world's leading scientists worked day and night to improve Earth's technology, to create weapons that could take on the alien invaders. Meanwhile, the human soldiers trained harder than ever before, preparing for the worst. But even as the preparations went on, something strange began to happen. The alien races were not as unified as they had seemed. The Krelkari were divided on how to respond to humanity. Some of their leaders believed Earth was too insignificant to warrant an all-out war, while others believed that humanity's defiance had to be crushed immediately. The Zorathians were similarly divided. Some saw Earth as a nuisance, while others feared that this small planet might become a symbol of resistance for the rest of the galaxy. And the Vulcans, the most powerful of them all, were still biding their time, watching the human race closely. No matter how divided the galaxy's forces were, one thing was clear. Earth was not going to be left alone. The war had begun, but it was not going to be a conventional battle. The galaxy was waking up to the fact that humanity had something they could never predict, an unstoppable will to survive. The silence continued to hang over Earth. For every action, there would be a response. Every move would be countered with retaliation. Humanity had started a war they couldn't have anticipated, and now it was up to them to finish it. The stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer about survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. This was about sending a message that would echo across the stars. Humanity's vengeance had just begun, and the galaxy would soon know that the broadcast was only the beginning of their reckoning. The weeks after Earth's bold broadcast were filled with uncertainty. It wasn't the kind of war humanity was used to, a war fought with conventional weapons and known tactics. This was a battle between civilizations, between the unknown and the unprepared. Humanity had challenged the might of the galaxy's most powerful forces, and now the galaxy was waking up to the storm it had created. The response from the alien races was swift, but not as expected. The Zorathians, Krelkari, and Velkans were notorious for their strength, their pride, and their belief in their own superiority. But they had never encountered a species like humanity. They had underestimated the human will to fight, and now they were about to realize the cost of their mistake. The Zorathian fleet, one of the most feared in the galaxy, was the first to make a move. Massive warships, their hulls lined with advanced energy shields and armed with weapons capable of obliterating entire cities, began their slow march toward Earth. Their fleet was led by Admiral Vasra, a fierce and calculating leader known for her ruthlessness. Her orders were clear. Earth had to be crushed, and humanity had to be made an example of. They would show the rest of the galaxy that defiance against the Zorathian Empire would not be tolerated. But what Admiral Vasra didn't anticipate was that Earth was not going to wait to be destroyed. General Burke had already begun his preparations. Human forces were scattered across the planet, working together to build weapons and defense systems unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Earth's military industries had shifted into high gear, manufacturing advanced artillery, missiles, and warships designed to stand up to the alien onslaught. But Earth's greatest weapon wasn't its technology. It was its determination to survive. In a hidden facility deep beneath the mountains of the United States, General Burke and his top scientists worked tirelessly. They were focused on the most ambitious project humanity had ever undertaken, a weapon that could potentially turn the tide of the war. The project was codenamed Eclipse, and its purpose was to harness the power of a previously unknown energy source, an energy that could disrupt even the most advanced alien technologies. Eclipse wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of humanity's refusal to be subjugated, a statement that they would not bow to the will of alien empires. As the scientists worked day and night to perfect the weapon, Burke knew that the coming days would be the most critical of their lives. The first alien ships were already in Earth's orbit, and the Zorathian fleet would soon make its move. The time for diplomacy was over. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Krelkari were preparing their own response. They were a brutal and savage race, known for their bloodthirsty nature. They had no interest in diplomacy or subtlety. They wanted to destroy. The Krelkari warlords, who had long been rivals of the Zorathians, saw Earth as a ripe target. If they could defeat the humans, it would solidify their place as the dominant force in the galaxy. And so the Krelkari ships began their slow journey toward Earth, their massive cruisers loaded with troops and war machines, eager for battle. Unlike the Zorathians, the Krelkari didn't hesitate. They didn't see the point in waiting to launch an attack. They were going to show the humans who ruled the galaxy, and they would do it with overwhelming force. Their forces moved into the solar system, and soon they were in direct communication with General Burke. But their words weren't diplomatic. They were demands. The Krelkari told Burke to surrender Earth, or face total annihilation. They were going to make an example of humanity, to show that no species could stand up to the might of the Krelkari Empire. Burke's response was chilling in its simplicity. "We will never surrender." The Krelkari didn't take kindly to such defiance. Within hours, they launched a massive assault on Earth's defenses. Dozens of ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their weapons primed and ready to destroy anything in their path. Cities that had been peaceful just hours ago were now turned into war zones. The human soldiers fought bravely, using every weapon at their disposal, but they were vastly outgunned. The Krelkari seemed unstoppable. Yet in the midst of the chaos, humanity was beginning to show its true strength. The humans were fighting not for land, not for power, but for their survival. They were fighting for their families, their homes, and their future. They weren't the galaxy's strongest species, but they were relentless, and that made them dangerous. As the Krulkari launched wave after wave of attacks, something unexpected happened. The Zorathian fleet, which had been holding back, suddenly moved in to engage the Krulkari. It seemed that the rivalry between the two alien empires had finally reached its breaking point. The Zorathians weren't about to let the Krulkari have all the glory. This fight wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about control of the galaxy. The result was total chaos. A battle that had started with an invasion of Earth quickly escalated into a full-scale galactic conflict. Alien ships clashed in Earth's orbit, with explosions lighting up the sky like a second sun. The entire planet watched in awe as the war unfolded above them. But even in the midst of the destruction, humanity held on. The Earth's military had created new tactics and strategies that helped them hold their ground against the alien invaders. General Burke's plan was working. Slowly, but surely, humanity was pushing back. But this was only the beginning. The broadcast that had ignited this conflict was now just a distant memory. The battle for Earth was far from over, and the galaxy was now fully aware that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The question now was whether Earth could hold out long enough to show the galaxy that they were not just a small, insignificant species. They were a species with a future, and they would fight for it at any cost. As the war raged on, humanity's wrath grew stronger, and the galaxy would soon learn the true meaning of defiance. The battle had escalated far beyond Earth's borders, and the conflict had taken on a life of its own. Humanity, once dismissed as weak, was now at the center of a galactic storm. The broadcast, a simple transmission meant to rally Earth's people, had become the spark that ignited a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The alien empires were realizing that humanity was not the easy target they had imagined. The human race had rallied together in the face of annihilation, and now they were willing to fight to the bitter end. The Zorathian and Krulkari fleets continued to clash in Earth's orbit, their massive ships trading fire, each trying to gain the upper hand. Humanity's forces had proven resilient, but they were still outmatched. The Krulkari's raw power was overwhelming, and the Zorathians' advanced technology was proving difficult to counter. Despite their fierce resistance, humanity was at a crossroads. General Burke knew that Earth's survival depended on more than just fighting back. It required something greater, something that would shock the galaxy to its core. In secret, the human military had been working on a weapon that could turn the tide of the war. A device that could disrupt the energy systems of the alien fleets, rendering their ships and weapons useless. It was humanity's last hope. The project, codenamed Genesis, was their ultimate weapon, a device that could not only protect Earth, but also prove to the galaxy that humanity would never be cowed. But it wasn't a weapon of destruction, it was a weapon of survival. The problem, however, was that the Genesis device was incomplete. The final pieces were still being assembled, and time was running out. The Krulkari were growing bolder, launching larger assaults on Earth's cities, while the Zorathians seemed to be making a play for Earth's resources. Humanity's hope rested on the Genesis project being finished before Earth was completely overrun. As the days passed, the battles grew more desperate. Earth's cities were being leveled, and the once thriving planet was now a war zone. But amidst the devastation, humanity fought back. Civilians, soldiers, scientists, everyone who had the strength to do so, worked tirelessly to support the military effort. The streets were filled with the sounds of people preparing for the worst, but they were not afraid. They were determined. This was their home, their last stand, and they were not going to let it fall without a fight. The alien fleets, meanwhile, were experiencing problems of their own. The Krulkari, who had been so confident in their ability to crush Earth, were beginning to face unexpected resistance from their own allies. The Zorathians, while technologically superior, were having difficulty coordinating their attacks against the humans and Krulkari forces. The chaos of the war had brought their unity into question. In the heat of battle, distrust and suspicion began to fester among the alien races. The very alliances that had seemed unbreakable were beginning to unravel, and the tide of war was starting to shift in humanity's favor. In a hidden underground facility, General Burke and his team watched as the Genesis device neared completion. The scientists were working around the clock, inputting the final calculations that would make the device operational. It was humanity's last shot at survival. As Burke watched the monitors, he knew the stakes had never been higher. If they failed now, Earth would fall, and the galaxy would see humanity not as a threat, but as a lesson in what happens when a species dares to challenge the greater powers. "We're almost there," said one of the lead scientists, her voice filled with exhaustion but determination. "We just need a few more minutes." Burke nodded, but he knew they didn't have that long. The Krelkari were nearing Earth's atmosphere, their ships already prepared to bombard the planet into submission. The Zorethians, too, had made their move, sending in their most advanced warships to crush the human defenses once and for all. The final assault was coming, and Burke had no idea if the Genesis device would be ready in time. In the midst of the chaos, a transmission came through from the Zorethian fleet. It was Admiral Vasra. Her voice, cold and calculated, echoed through the speakers. "General Burke," she said, "you have made your stand. But you are out of time. Surrender now, and we will show mercy. Refuse, and you will all be wiped from existence." Burke didn't hesitate. His response was simple, but it held all the weight of humanity's resolve. "We will never surrender." As the final battle approached, humanity's fate hung in the balance. The Genesis device was humanity's last hope, but its success was uncertain. Would it be enough to turn the tide of war, or would the galaxy's might crush humanity's defiance? The countdown to the ultimate confrontation had begun. On the front lines, the soldiers of Earth fought with everything they had. Their families, their homes, and their future were on the line. The aliens had underestimated the human spirit, and now they would feel the full force of humanity's wrath. The broadcast that had ignited this war had done more than spark a conflict. It had awakened something far deeper. It had awakened the fury of a species fighting for its survival, and the galaxy would soon realize that when humanity fought back, it fought with the strength of every soul that had ever walked its soil. As the alien ships closed in, the Genesis device powered up. Humanity's final hope was about to be unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same again.